Hey guys, welcome back to another wrap-up video. I just wanted to warn you guys before you jumped right in. Not sure what was going on this day, but this video, don't even know how to describe what was going on, but just bear with me and I hope you guys enjoy. Bye! Okay, let's jump into this month's wrap-up. Hello, welcome back to my channel. I feel like I say this every single month, but September flew by so quickly. I feel like in a blink of an eye it was already done, but on the contrary, I look at some of these books and I'm like, I read this month? It felt so long ago that I read these books. Let's just jump right in. The first book I read in September was The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the fourth book in the Inheritance Game series. It doesn't follow Avery like the first three books. It actually follows Jameson and Grayson, which are two of the four brothers that you meet in the series. This book kind of shoves you into a whole nother adventure of secret societies and lost families. I rated this book a 4-star. Honestly, I expect nothing less from Jennifer because she is such a great author. Did it again. It is such a fast-paced, fun kind of mystery read where you also learn so much about Jameson and Grayson and kind of like their background and their family history that they also don't really know much about, so you're learning as they learn. With that being said, I also feel like the story focused on their family a little too much rather than them as specific characters. Because we know Grayson and Jameson at this point, I wanted something deeper, like a deeper dive. I feel like it focused more on random people that you meet in this book more than we do on the characters that we already know. What I really enjoyed about this book is that we got more scenes with Tobias Hawthorne, which is their grandfather. In the first three books, you kind of get he said, she said situations with Tobias. You didn't really get to see firsthand what he was like with his grandsons. You just heard things from them. With this one, because the boys obviously knew their grandfather, they had memories, we kind of jumped back into the past sometimes and relived those memories in first person through the POVs of the boys, so you kind of got more insight on what the grandfather was like. But yeah, overall, I wouldn't say this is my favorite book in the series, but the cliffhanger definitely gets me excited for the next book, which is coming out summer of 2024, called The Grandest Game. Okay, so the next book I read in the month of September is Legendary by Stephanie Garber. This is the second book in the Caraval series. After the first book in the Caraval series, this book kind of drags you back into the world of magic and lies, but this time the lies may be a little too real. So I rated this book a 3.25. It's in a different POV than what the first one was in, but you learn so much information about their past and the mystery behind the one person that has been absent in their lives and why they are so intertwined and connected with the Caraval. You meet a lot of new characters in this book, and I like had a love-hate relationship because on one hand I really liked the fact that we were meeting these characters. I really liked them, but on another hand it made this book feel like a completely separate book and not within a series, because one, you're in a different POV, and then two, you're interacting with a bunch of different characters that you just met in this book. It felt like a different book in the same universe, and it didn't allow me to get attached to any of the characters. It felt very two-dimensional. If something happened to them, I wouldn't really have cared. Overall, I still enjoy the magical world and the kind of riddles and mystery that you have in this book. If I were to explain this series, it would be a mystery set in a really whimsical, magical fantasy world. So it's a lot of fun. I just don't think it has that much depth to it. Either way, I'm really excited to read the third and final book in this series, and then also jump into the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, also by Stephanie Garber. Okay, so the third book I read in September was Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is a bull rider meets a glorified babysitter. That sounds really bad. That sounds not so fun. Just ignore that I said that. I rated this book a 4.5. I really enjoyed it. It's dual POV, and you follow Rhett, who is a professional bull rider, and Summer, who is a lawyer and also Rhett's personal PR assistant after he got into a scandal and the public kind of hates him right now. It's a really cute romance, and it really feeds into the Southern charm. And what I mean by that is there's just really small acts of chivalry and mannerisms from Rhett that really give off the Southern gentleman kind of that make you giggle and kind of like blush as a reader. I had no expectations going into this. I just knew that it was like an adult rom-com, and that was about it. I went in this kind of blind. I was expecting more of a simple romance, but it took a turn that I was not expecting because it got a lot deeper than I thought it was gonna be. There was just so much about these characters that I love, and I didn't feel like the conflict was immature. I felt like I could understand both sides, and I like when authors are able to add in a conflict, but the author didn't make it so unreasonable that as a reader you're like, why is this even a thing? That doesn't happen in this book. And overall, I really enjoy this. Really happy that I'm enjoying the Chestnut Springs series because I did get all of the books already, so if I didn't like this book I would have been so heartbroken. After finishing up Flawless, I jumped into Allin by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the third book in the Natural series. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about the series, so I won't really go too much into it. Just know that the series is basically Criminal Minds meets the YA world, and I gave this book a 4.75. Obviously, because it is the third book in the series, I can't say too much on it. This book was kind of mind-blowing. I like how each book has progressively gotten better, in my opinion. I really like this one because it dove into one of my favorite characters in this series. You feel a lot of the growth in the found family in this group of characters, that you come out of this book so much more attached to them than you were reading the other two books. Like the other two books, yes, you had that found family, yes, you had that friend group that you just felt so attached to, but this book really did it. There was just something about this plot that kind of finalized that friend group for you. I enjoyed this a lot. It was really number heavy. If you guys have read this book, you guys know what I'm talking about. Like, it's really number heavy, so sometimes I had to reread some things because I was like, sorry, I can't just skip over that unless I understand it, because with the mystery you should try to understand the clues. But I really did enjoy this book. I'm so excited to jump into the last book of the series because there is an overarching mystery that spans the entire series. You get so much of in this book. You will want to read the next book, and I didn't because I was trying to give myself some self-control because I just don't want this series to end. Next up we have Slaying the Vampire Conqueror by Carissa Broadbent. This is a standalone romance between a vampire and I wouldn't she's not human, but she is human. But like human in a fantasy world, you know? This is set in the same universe as the Nightborn duet. A member of a magical cult is mission to assassinate the vampire conqueror that lands on the shore of her country. I gave this book a 4-star. You can read this as a standalone because you get all of the world building and the character development in this book, but I do recommend you read it in the correct rating order if you want to read her series. So that would be The Serpent and the Wings of Night, Six Scorched Roses, which is a novella following a different couple as well, and then the second main book in the series, which is The Star Curse, Ash Curse Star King something. I don't remember. Her titles for those books were kind of long, so I think it's like the Ash Cursed. I'm gonna give up on that. And then after that one, you read this one. We follow our main character named Selena. She is a part of this cult that worships this goddess. She has this magic that is really fascinating to me because even though she doesn't have eyes, she's able to see through this magic, and it's really interesting, honestly, reading about how she kind of functions. But she is given the mission to go assassinate this vampire conqueror, so she has to gain his trust and join his army as he's parading through her entire country, taking city by city. I really enjoyed this book, but I also think that there were a lot of like slow moments in this book because it is set in war. It got kind of boring because it felt really repetitive. It was like conquer a city, plan, conquer, and it just felt kind of repetitive at times. But I did really like the characters. I liked their connections with the main series. The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. You have Dr. Carlson, and he is the strictest, meanest, and most foul professor to most PhD students, but for some reason not to Olive. What I'm gonna go into is on the back of this book, so I'm not spoiling anything even though it feels like it. You kind of get this at the very beginning part of the book. I gave this book a 5-star. So we are following a third-year PhD candidate named Olive, and one day she just suddenly kisses the meanest professor. Now I know this sounds really weird. It sounds like a student-professor kind of romance, which is illegal, but it's different because because in the PhD programs, she's not technically a student, she's a candidate working towards her PhD. So she's doing research and writing thesis papers, and it would only be not allowed if she was in his lab doing research, but she isn't. Be at ease. It is not some type of him holding authority over her, because he has no authority over her. And he wouldn't do that. Adam Carlson wouldn't do that. Anyways, where was I? She kissed him one day, randomly, and fortunately, unfortunately, who knows? And they end up embarking in a fake dating kind of situation, which it was so good. Olive was obviously horrified, but I was delighted. Throughout this entire book, I was so entertained. It was so fun. It is such a cute adult rom-com. It read very YA, so it was really easy to read through, but it had very mature topics and characters. I blew through this book. Adam Carlson is the blueprint of a book boyfriend, of a normal boyfriend. He does the smallest things that you would not even remember being brought up as a reader, but once he does it, you're like, oh my gosh, they did talk about that in one sentence chapters ago, but he remembered, because Adam Carlson remembers everything. I really enjoyed this book. This is everything I would want in a lighthearted rom-com. If you love when the male love interest is obsessed with the girl, but not creepy obsessed, this is your book. This is your book. Absolutely. I wish I could erase my memories and reread this book for the first time. Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I've been wanting to read this for the longest time, and I finally did it, and I'm so mad at myself for not reading this sooner. This is basically a futuristic dystopian world that meets corruption, betrayal, and loyalty. There is so much in this story. It was not even 400 pages, but there is so much in this. On the plot, the characters, the world building, everything. The writing was just so well written, and the pacing was so good that you got everything you needed in one book that wasn't even 400 pages. I gave this book a 5-star. Also, another 5-star read, which is crazy. I usually maybe get one a month, so having 2 is kind of crazy to me. This was such a fun read. There are really heavy topics in here, and things turn a little darker, so if you want to read it and you are sensitive to certain trigger warnings, definitely look up trigger warnings before jumping into this. It's a high sci-fi fantasy. There is information and topics that are really complicated, and you really need to focus to understand. You follow a boy named Darrow. He is literally 16 years old. I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, this is not a YA book. Why is he so young? It's because of the society that they're in. There are different colors, and the colors represent basically social classes. He is in the lowest class. Things happen, and suddenly he's in this Hunger Games simulation of war and trying to survive. A lot of people kind of relate this to the Hunger Games in space. There are certain aspects that do remind me of the Hunger Games, but most of it is very different. It was just such a wild roller coaster of a ride. I really enjoyed this book. I did not know how I was gonna feel about this book, because this was my first kind of real jump into sci-fi fantasy, and I was really worried that it was going to be a little too complicated and stressful for me to read through, but I really enjoyed this book, guys. I highly recommend if you want to jump into sci-fi. There's so much on betrayal and loyalty. It makes you think. It's a lot of government and political stuff. I cannot wait to continue this series. If you start this book, I really highly recommend you read up till 100 pages, because that's when the real juicy stuff happens. Well, let me tell you, every single chapter there is something going on. Okay, the next 2, I was honestly debating if I should put it in this video or not, because I DNF'd the next 2 books. I didn't know if you guys wanted to hear about my DNFs, but I realized, hey, it's a monthly wrap-up. Might as well add books that I didn't enjoy and give you guys my opinions on it. So the first one I DNF'd was Iron Widow. I was really excited to read this book, and I'm really sad that I DNF'd it, because I was really wanting to like this book. Where do I start? I think the very first thing I thought about this book was the pacing was way too quick. I like a book with a fast pace, but I still need character development. I still need struggle. I still need something to kind of keep me on the edge of my seat, rather than the pace being so fast and her having this much rage and her not having to struggle to get what she wants. You know, like, we love a girl boss. I support women. I will support in her rage, in her vendetta, and her revenge. I get it. But this was done so abnormal. It felt more more like a villain origin story than a girl that is heartbroken and angry with society and trying to change it. It felt like she just wanted power rather than changing society, which is what she said she wanted, but she was going about it so wrong. The main character Zitian was kind of infuriating. She was annoying. She was super impulsive. I understand female rage. I get it. Everything played out so perfectly for her. She didn't have to work for anything. She set her mind on one thing and she got it almost immediately. Her big thing is how society treats women, and it's a very real problem. Obviously, sexism is very much still a problem in society, and she wanted to change that. If you guys don't know what this book is about, it's basically, I imagined it as like Power Rangers, but they're not humanoids. They're more like animals, so like Nine-Tailed Fox, but they're mechanical and they're controlled by these male pilots. They have these concubines that are their co-pilots, but then the concubines die most of the time because their brain power or whatever it is aren't as strong as men, so they die. She doesn't want that. She's like, women shouldn't be dying left and right for these men, which I was behind that. I was like, yeah girl, I support you. Go do what you need to do. Kill some people. Do what you need to do. But it got too like, oh, you're like, you don't care. You just want to wreak havoc. That's what you want. That's how it felt. And I DNF'd it because she felt really hypocritical. She met this guy that told her why he was a pilot and why it was against his will and how he feels and all of this. And she's like, I don't care. Like, I obviously can't tell you too much because I DNF'd it, so I don't know that much, but I did read reviews on this and I knew I just could not stand it anymore. There was one part of this, it was really early on into the book. She achieved what she was set out to do. Instead of going through the kind of normal thing where someone would have a little bit of maybe guilt or PTSD from killing someone, she kills someone for the very first time in her life and she feels nothing. And I feel like that is so unrealistic. I don't know, I feel like her character is so two-dimensional, so flat. She screamed, "Welcome to your nightmare." The way I cringed when I read that, I was like, welcome to your nightmare? Girl, who do you think you are? I would be behind you. I'm glad that you got your revenge and you killed this monster of a man. Yes. But she just feels fake. She feels like an NPC from a game. She feels like a bot. Did not like it. And her thought process was crazy. She wanted to fight sexism, but she wanted to do it in a way that seemed kind of sexist in reverse. She wanted equality, but then she also wanted more power over men. You know, like not actual equality. And I'm really sorry if you guys like this book. It just wasn't for me. Okay, so as for the last book I read, or better yet, DNF'd, Case Histories by Kate Atkinson. I gave this a chance, I really did, but I did not get to 100 pages. Could not do it. This was a book club pick between me and Janelle, and I am so sorry to Janelle because I picked this book and we both agreed that we could not finish this. It was so all over the place. You have 3 cases and it sounds really interesting. So case 1, you have a little girl that goes missing. Case 2, a beautiful young office worker falls victim to a maniac's apparently random attack. Case 3, a new mother finds herself trapped in a hell of her own making with a very needy baby and a very demanding husband, until a fit of rage creates a grisly, bloody escape. 30 years later, after the first incident, as a private detective, Jackson Brody begins investigating all 3 cases, startling connections and discoveries emerge. It sounded really interesting. I was really excited to get into this, but the writing style was so not for me. It was so rambly. Felt like someone was talking to you about one topic. As soon as they say something that reminds them of something else, they start talking about that. So we get a page and a half, sometimes even 2 pages on one thing that literally did not matter to what was going on. It just kept rambling. Like, it made no sense whatsoever. Maybe he's in a car and he's going to do something, and then it reminds him of something, and then it reminds him of another thing, and then it reminds him of another thing, and then suddenly as a reader you're like, where is he again? What is he doing in present time? Like, what's going on? Is this present time? Or is this present time? What is going on right now? So much random information that I really did not care about. So I also looked up ratings for this. A lot of people said the same thing. It just felt like she used 1,000 words to describe what could have been described in 100. I looked up the answers, I looked up the connections, I wanted to know how are they connected, but I didn't want to read the book anymore. A lot of people say that the connections aren't really connections, they're just coincidences. They're not actually connected to each other. That frustrates me. If I read this entire book and I just got coincidental reasons why they're connected, I would be so mad. So I'm so glad I DNF'd this book. I did not enjoy it and I DNF'd it, and that's my opinion. So I hope you guys are okay with my opinion and don't come for me. Please do not come for me. I will not judge you if you like these books. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.